Take heed that you do not your alms before men, to be seen of them. Otherwise ye have no reward of your Father which is in heaven. Therefore, when thou doest thine alms, do not sound a trumpet before thee, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, that they may have glory of men. Verily I say unto you, they have their reward.
Good morning. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. We are continuing in the Gospel of Luke. We're in chapter 11, verse 33. That wasn't the right song. I was going to play the one where it says the light of the body is the eye, because that's the passage we're on. And so, yeah, last week we spent on the last day a lot of time on those verses about the sign that would be given. Most people think in terms of Jonah being a sign, being the resurrection, but really, all people saw was preaching, for the most part. They heard a report. They had to judge the thing for himself. The prophet himself came, and a greater than Jonah was there, as he said. A wiser than Solomon, greater than Solomon was there. Greater than Jonah was there. And therefore, they had, if the men of Nineveh were justly condemned, or if the men of Sodom could be justly condemned, or if the Queen of Sheba could be commended for having traveled so far to see Solomon. They were constantly tempting Jesus, testing him, trying to, why? Because they didn't want to believe what he had to say. And that's what this has to do, to some degree. No man, when he hath lighted a candle, putteth it in a secret place, neither under a bushel, but on a candlestick, that they which come in may see the light. I'm going to adjust the size of my window. That's why it cuts off weird. Now I can see the limits. The light of the body is the eye. Therefore, when thine eye is single, thy whole body also is full of light. But when thy eye is evil, thy body also is full of darkness. Take heed, therefore, that the light which is in thee be not darkness. If thy whole body, therefore, be full of light, having no part dark, the whole shall be full of light, as when the bright shining of a candle doth give thee light. Okay. This is a little light speech. There's two basic ideas. But one, I want to focus on the second one first. Because he starts off with the part about putting a light on a candle. And then he talks about the light of the body. And then he goes back and he mentions candle again, because there's an introversion of ideas there. It starts off with one idea, he goes into another one, then he goes back to the original. And plus, the second idea relates to what we were just talking about, in my opinion, the receiving of his preaching. The light of the body is the eye. Now, for one, I don't know where and when I heard this. I remember someone saying, basically a skeptic, an unbeliever, saying, because I'm skeptical. There's a difference between being skeptical and being a radical skeptic, which is someone who is disinclined to believe in any reason. I am inclined to believe, but I have questions, and I think that's most normal people. Some people are unquestioningly believing, and I don't know. I have nothing to say about that except I'm not that way. And plus, you better not be that way across the board. You can't be that way about everything, and nobody is. There are some radically credulous people, but they get taken advantage of very quickly and learn. I suppose I might have been in that camp when I was young. But, you know, the bruising you receive teaches you to be a little less easily persuaded. In fact, can cause you to react strongly, to have to overcompensate. You know, being made a fool of a few times causes you to want to avoid being made a fool of. Being laughed at a few times will make you want to not be laughed at again, if you've ever experienced it. So, especially when you're young and impressionable, it has a formative effect. Anyways, I remember hearing that the light of the body meant that, not just that it meant it, but that the ancients believed that the light went out from the eye. And I think that's got to be nonsense. I'd never actually heard evidence of it, but someone said it. And I don't think that's true. That doesn't make any sense. From the biblical perspective. I mean, he talks about putting on a candle on a candlestick so it can give light. So we know that light comes from light sources. It doesn't make any sense. I don't even understand what they mean. Yeah, the light comes from the eye into the rest of the body, meaning the reason my hand can see is because of the eye. The reason my feet know where they're walking is because my eyes tell them. I mean, as far as if they see, and if there's anything to be seen, if anything in the body has light, it's because of the eyes. You know, he says, Jesus has this eyes and ears theme. He says, blessed are your eyes for they see, your ears for they hear. And it relates back to that, to different kinds of sight, obviously. He's not just talking about plain old sight. What he's saying is, it's an analogy. The sight of the eyes is an analogy for the rest of your understanding. You know what I mean? And just like he said, take heed how you hear. He's not going to say it again, but it's essentially take heed how you hear. Take heed how you see. You know, you ever had someone say to you, well, that's not the way I see it. Yeah, I have a different perspective on that. Perspective, spectacles, eyes, seeing. Different words that describe the same thing. We have all kinds of idioms. Like I said, I don't see it that way. It doesn't mean like I actually see it differently. It means I see it idiomatically differently. I have a different perspective on it. It's not even a good word on it. I may be looking at the exact same angle, and I don't see it the same. But we use that idea of like, I see it from a different angle, meaning because sometimes when you view objects from a different way, they do look different, right? And that's an analogy for different kinds of understanding. Because you can be standing and looking at the same thing in the same way, but you think of it differently because of what's going on in your head. You don't have to take a physical angle. You can take a purely mental angle and see things differently. And so, when your eye is evil, when you're looking at the world with evil eyes, and what does evil mean? Evil, the Hebrew word was ra'ah, and this might be the word kaka, actually. Kakia. Sometimes it's kaka for evil. Kakia. I think that's the one I'm thinking of. Or is it poneros? There's like multiple, just like in English, we have evil, wicked, bad, calamitous. There's all kinds of words that can be associated with bad or evil. I'll look it up. Not that it's critical here, because usually evil doesn't mean wicked. And the King James translator generally didn't translate it as wicked. Let me see here. Oh, I'm sorry. My engineering part of my brain is not working too well. Okay, there we go. So many clicks just to get here. All right. Did I at least get to the right chapter? No. Anyways, and is it even, it may not even be that important, but let's just where's evil? Evil. Poneros. Okay, where's the other one? And poneros is not wicked either. It is a kind of an evil. It means like toilsome, apparently. So I'm not. It can mean wicked too. Okay. All right, so it's not the normal. That's good. I checked it out then. Ponos means pain, laborious, trouble. Properly pain-ridden. Emphasizing the inevitable agonies that always go with evil. Well, because there's a one word that means, at least in Hebrew, ra'ah, like the breaking up of that which is good. And we can see the way it's used. It's used as the opposite of good and evil. It's not the same as virtuous and wicked, though it can be translated wicked sometimes, doesn't it? Let me see. Well, I want to see the King James definition from Strong's. Strong, really? From a different of Ponos, hurtful. Yeah, see, hurtful. That which is hurtful is evil. Properly in effect or influence, and thus differing from kakos, which refers actually to essential character, as well as from saphros, which indicates degeneracy from original virtue. See, there's very subtle differences. Figuratively calamitous, also passively ill. It can mean someone's sick, or like an evil humor or something like that, right? Disease, but especially morally culpable, derelict, vicious, fascinoris. There's a word I've never even heard of, and I've read this definition before. Neuter singular, mischief, malice, or plural, guilt. So it's translated bad, evil, grievous, harm, lewd. That's an interesting one. It probably doesn't mean lewd like we would think. Malicious, wickedness. I wonder where it's translated wickedness. I don't have time. O thou wicked servant. Poneros. So it doesn't quite, when we think of wicked, we think of a certain kind of wickedness. But this is evil in effect, right? Like I say, good is that which does good, not which makes you feel good, right? Evil also is that which does evil, that which does bad, that which undoes that which is good. Evil in effect. It's not so much about the virtue aspect, but about, like, as far as like the other word we had, right? Saphros, which meant sort of like corrupting a virtue, but it has a bad effect. I just like to know. I don't know if that's going to play into some major part of this point, but now we know. And knowing is half the battle, as they used to say in the PSA. So, I'm just, like I said, I didn't really need the definition because I can teach this without having any necessary specific knowledge of Greek words and stuff. It's simply this. Your eye takes in information from the world. It sees things. It enlightens your mind, all right? The whole physical part about it is fine. It means your being sees based on what your being has knowledge of the visible world through the eyes. And what it's saying is, now how could your eye corrupt that? I know we're thinking of healthy eyes. You know what I mean? I mean, if your eye was not healthy in the sense that you, like in the literal sense, if you had an unhealthy condition of the eyes, right? If it led you astray, right? It would put your body in darkness because you wouldn't be able to see, like being blind. In fact, this idea of having an eye in this sense is like a sickness. Well, that can be metaphorically transferred to the idea of the way you look at the world being corrupted by evil influences. And that's what I was talking about, why people sometimes don't receive the gospel has merely to do with they don't want to receive the gospel. So their vision is corrupted. Like we use the same idioms this day where we talk about it's like, I'm telling him, but he doesn't want to hear. Or also like the line from that movie that I never saw, but I know the line, you can't handle the truth. Like people don't want to hear the truth because they don't like the truth. And so oftentimes, unless you are very strictly disciplined, which very few people are, when a truth comes that contradicts your dearly held belief, even if you're really disciplined, you're naturally extremely skeptical, right? But sometimes, even in the light of evidence, such as when Jesus was walking the earth, healing people, he was doing signs. He was healing the sick, casting out devils. And what were they doing? They were ascribing it to the work of the devil. He casted out devils by the way. See, it wasn't that they we're bored of this preaching. We would like to see something more. It's not like, like he was just walking around claiming to be the Messiah, backing it up with nothing. The idea is he was providing things that should have been sign enough. But they couldn't see the signs. They couldn't read the writing on the wall, so to speak, in that metaphorical sense of seeing what Jesus was doing as being, this is a sign. The blind receive their sight. The lame walk. Those with demons have them cast out of them. By whom do your children cast them out? Maybe their children never cast out devils in their life. Their disciples never cast out any devils. And neither did they. And oddly enough, he says, your disciples. Who do your disciples cast them out by? Because it almost like assumes, well, you cast out devils, right? Mr. Pharisee, Mr. Lawkeeper. You cast out devils, of course. So who do your disciples cast out devils by? It's sort of, it's an interesting kind of thing he's doing there, because it's like, instead of saying, well, who do you cast out devils by? Instead of putting them in the embarrassing position of having to answer, well, we never cast out devils in our lives. We can't do it, and that's why whatever, that may not why anything, but we can't. We never have. He doubles the embarrassment in a sense by saying, and also takes the pressure off them in a certain sense, by whom your disciples cast them out. Which I think is kind of amusing. If I by Beelzebub cast them out, but this is the finger of God, he suggested to them. But they didn't want to believe it because of other factors. You know what I mean? Obviously, when you see someone cast out a devil, you don't automatically go, he's doing it because of it's the devil's power. Look at him healing that old lady of her crippling disease. The devil gave her the disease, and the devil takes it away. You don't take that attitude towards someone, because it's an obviously believing attitude. I believe in the devil. I believe in demons. It's a believing attitude, but one that's hostile for other reasons. And the other reasons Jesus here is putting into the idea of an evil eye. In fact, in the parable of the workers' wages, when the workers begin to grumble against the master because he pays them the same, he pays the guys who worked all day the same as he does the people who work for an hour, even though that was the wages the ones who worked all day had agreed to. They'd agree to work for that much. And just because he paid the same thing to people who had worked a tenth of the time, he says, is it not lawful for me to do with what I will with what is my own? It belongs to me, therefore I do with it what I want. This is God's attitude towards everything, honestly. And he says, is your eye evil because I am good? And in that context, what he's saying is like, I'm being generous to people. Your eye is evil because I'm doing good to people beyond what they deserve. Even though when I hired you this morning, you thought I was a fine fellow for giving you a job. You know what I mean? You get born into this world, maybe, right? Innocent, relatively speaking, innocent of the world in some ways. You're not innocent. You have a tendency towards. Babies are some of the most uncivilized and mean people you will ever encounter. They're not. My wife would say they're very sweet. She loves them, but they're also very uncivilized and selfish, and and children will have a tendency towards testing the limits of society and doing selfish things until they learn better. They're going to be selfish. They'll lie, they'll cheat, they'll steal. And like, you ever try to play a game with a kid? They cheat constantly. They're they don't necessarily know they're doing evil, but they have a tendency towards it. That's why nobody, it was only in the modern age that people began to question the idea of the evil of human nature. And the people got these weird ideas. Because for centuries, no one, when Christians started preaching this, everyone's like, well, of course children are evil by nature, and we all are, of course. We have to teach everybody what's what. Otherwise, they'll ruin everything we've built here. They won't know all the rules unless we teach them. All the things society has agreed upon, they're not going to naturally just slip into, the social programming comes after you're born. So nobody questioned that until like modern times, when people got all clever and decided children were born angels, which is, I don't know. And it's funny that they wrap themselves in, this is scientific, but who doesn't, right? Everyone wants to have science on their side. So, in that parable, all I remember that is like, everyone comes in the world innocent and thinking, hey, the world's a decent place. Until they get old and they see rich people and they're like, God's not fair. I should be rich. I'm a better person than they are. Whatever, whatever. Why wasn't I blessed that way? Why wasn't I born into a better family? Why wasn't I born into why didn't I have this? Why wasn't I smarter? Didn't I get more motivation? Whatever. Usually don't blame them. That's the way I think, that'd be more mine. Like, I wish I had more this or that in me so I could do better, as opposed to just wanting circumstances around me to make, so I'd be exactly the same. I mean, I know if I was any different, I wouldn't be me, by the way. So I'm not actually saying that, but that would be where my mind would thought to, how could I be different, that I would tackle the world better, as opposed to how can the world be different so that it suits me. That's how people think very often. They're not thankful. They're ungrateful. They look at the world differently with different knowledge. The way they see the world is corrupted and changed. So also the way they look at God is corrupted and changed by their knowledge. And so someone can do all kinds of miracles, healings, whatever, but because of other factors, which can only be the teachings he's saying. There's some aspect of his teachings. And very often, I think, in modern times, a lot of people don't want to be Christians because they like to masturbate to porn too much. You know what I mean? Or they want to sleep around. You know what I mean? Or they don't want to do things that they associate with, let's say, traditional life, because they associate the Bible with a lot of tradition. I mean, I do a lot of things that are untraditional in my family. I mean, I don't, but because it's like, what is, people think of family life in terms of 1950s Ozzie and Harriet or something like that, or Leave It to Beaver, or Father Knows Best. They think of this nuclear family thing we had going for like a decade. But that's just one tradition, very recent as a matter of fact. But it's like, that image is not necessarily the home, but a father and a mother, a husband and a wife certainly is. And they associate Christianity with that. It's like, oh, well, I want to just, I want to test people out. I want to have the option to quit at any time. They have all these other ideas. And then they associate it with certain things. Because a lot of times it doesn't take much to cause people to stumble. You know what I mean? A lot of times when you bring a new idea to someone, they're only looking for one reason. That's all they need. Once you believe, you can deal with a lot of doubts. I can have many doubts in different forms and I can deal with them. But when you don't believe, sometimes crossing that threshold from unbelief to belief is difficult, and it's almost impossible if you don't want to. Then it requires some, it's totally possible. I mean, look at the Apostle Paul. And plus, I know of people who were relatively unbelieving and very skeptical, but had experiences like I've had or something similar. Not the exact same experience. I never heard anyone describe the same thing. But I'm sure it's happened before. I think God cooked up something new just for me. It wasn't like that. But, they may have some supernatural experience. I know someone who had a very vivid dream. I think it's funny because it's like, for the amount I think about God, I think I would have more dreams about God. I never dream about God. When I spent whole days meditating on, like, I have a song I was working on, and it's all about the throne of God and all that's going on around it, right? And I've been thinking about this, constantly visualizing it in my mind, right? For like over the course of many days. And I never get one dream about it. Whereas I eat a funny egg salad sandwich or something, and I dream about giant egg salads chasing after me. I'm just making that up. You know what I mean? But I mean, something like that. You know what I mean? Like, I'll have some minor incident in my day. I mean, for all the big and little of God in my life, why don't I dream about God at least once in a while? I've dreamt about God once. Once. One dream. And it was a vision dream. It seemed like a vision. It wasn't like some wacky thing where Santa Claus was sitting on the throne of God or something like that. It was an adult dream. And why once? Only once? It's something I think about every single day. I talk about all the time. I marvel. It doesn't come up in my dreams at all? Almost everything else comes up. Why is that so not in my dreams? Why has my brain got some block? Is it, maybe it's just purely my psyche? I mean, I would think that I would just make it up. Like, because I can't control my imagination in my dreams. I would think my brain would throw up a couple of dreams about God every once in a while. Why doesn't it? I almost am curious. People have so few dreams. Like, even the dreams people tell me about God are not. Well, I've had a few people tell me. I'm like, sounds like a dream about God. The part about I can't tell them is like, I don't know how to interpret your dream. You know what I mean? I might interpret it, but it's like, don't you have an interpretation? You know what I mean? Or something, you know what I mean? It's like, if you have an interpretation, I may see things totally different. You know what I mean? Plus, I'm going to want to be cautious because I didn't see the dream. I don't much like interpreting dreams for other people because it just doesn't seem to be. I've had several people, they don't seem to be satisfied with my interpretations. You know what I mean? It's like, and I think obviously they've got some other thought. It's like, well, then why ask me? You know what I mean? If you're not going to listen to it, then don't ask. If you expect me to affirm what you think, that's not likely. I think differently than other people. I rarely think the same way. I thought that's why you like to listen. It's like, this is such a different perspective on things. Exactly. So, I tend to think if God gives you a dream, it's for you. Unless it's so like, Pharaoh had this dream so symbolic, so vivid over a course of several nights. He was like, you ever dream 7 times or something like that? And it's totally symbolic. And it felt like, oh, I really want to ask. It's like, I guess, if it's troubling you, robbing you of sleep, driving you insane because it's so vivid and repetitive, it just keeps happening and happening. It's like, I suppose you should ask somebody. Maybe it's important. And I suppose the Lord would tell you on some level, I don't know. That was so Joseph could get out of prison. So he'd be made, you know what I mean? There was like big events going on. That's not normal. Anyways. How you see things, how you interpret things is important. And people don't listen because they don't want to, because their eye is corrupt. The way and when, Jesus says, is your eye evil because I'm good? The way you look at the world is corrupting your understanding of right and wrong. Because there's nothing wrong if, like that parable, people understand, your human nature allows you to understand, hey, if I go out and I agree with my employer to work all day for $100, and then some guy comes in doing the same work and only works 1 hour and gives him also $100, I'm going to feel a certain way. It's natural. But the truth is, the guy didn't do anything wrong by doing that, by giving that guy $100. That was just generous. You know what I mean? I'd like to think like, well, I could say like, well, why didn't he give him 50 and give me 150? You know why? Because 100 was a day's wages, or the penny. And it's like that guy, because you don't think people. I didn't even touch on this in my parable, but it just struck me. Like what if that guy's family needs to eat too, and they ain't eating on a half a penny? You know what I mean? Yours is. I wanted to make sure all the idle workers got work today so their families could eat. You know? It's like replace it with a chicken. You know what I mean? I'll give you a chicken if you work all day today. A cooked chicken dinner. Right? And then he hires people all day. Nothing has changed really as far as the value of what he's giving away, I'm just saying. Give you a big basket of food, enough to feed a family of 5. Right? I'm just saying, like, they are merely looking at the numbers and grumbling because they thought they deserved more. But he only had so many baskets of chicken, only so many pennies to pass around. Should give us more. It's like, that's what you agreed to. And he was doing good. Jesus was going around doing good also. And they thought evil of him because there was something about it they didn't like. They saw it from a particular angle that, like whether it was, like I said, I was planning on divorcing my wife. This man says that's adultery. He can't be the Messiah. You know what I mean? I want to see the world in such a way that he's not the Messiah. So whatever he does and says, I'm going to see it in a certain way so that he is not the Messiah. People to this day are like that. And preaching them is very difficult because all they need is one reason, one thing, one stumbling block. It doesn't even have to be a big deal. Just one little reason to not believe and they won't. You know? They start, like, all right, I'll read the Bible. And they start reading the Bible. Look it, the light of the body is the eye. They think light goes out of the eye like headlights to see the world. This is ridiculous. I'm not paying attention to this. You know what I mean? Or whatever. They're reading Genesis. The ark. The ark. You can't fit all the species of animals in the world onto a little boat like that. Look at the size. And they do the calculations. It's just like you're looking at totally the wrong thing. You're not getting it. Same thing. So they will find the first reason they can, and then they will not believe. And sometimes it only takes one little thing to cause people to, I guess I remember that apologist, his daughter, who was the wonder kid who was going around telling people what transubstantiation was. Actually, that's Catholic. Telling people what hypostasis is. Don't you know what hypostasis is? Hypostasis? You never heard of hypostasis? What about the hypostatic union? Do you know what the hypostatic union is? Well, she did. So he'd go up in front of because he trained her, he'd go up in front of the church. Who can tell me what the hypostatic union is? And everyone's like, because they didn't go to seminary like he did. And they don't do it every day like he does. And that's so persuasive. I can go up to an unbeliever and I just go, hey, hypostatic union. That's where it's at. And he's like, of a truth, God is in you, because no one except a godly man could use such big words and blow my mind. And what does it mean? Hypostatic union is it's kind of like a description of the way in which the Trinity is unified. Wow, I'm so enlightened. It's like the relationship between the Father and the Son and the fact that they have one essence but distinct persons. The essence that binds them together, the singular essence, is the hypostatic union, I think. See, I don't even know for sure. I when I read the article, I knew, because it said there. I didn't usually talk in terms of hypostatic union. You know why? Because you can't understand it, and it doesn't do you any good to know it. It's a nice shortcut, but it's like, really, what is there to, what is there to say about the hypostatic union? See, if you want to use a quick word to get to something without describing it, like, you don't want to say, well, the guy who is elected by the electors, who are people chosen by the states through the voting to represent them in an electoral college to select who's going to be the president, the leader of our country. You might, instead of just say, you would say the president, right? And it makes sense to have one word to sum all that up. President of the United States. That's whatever. I mean, it's the executive branch of the government. Sometimes you want to have one word that sums everything up that by itself doesn't make any sense. If you think about it, the president is the president. What is it without that? One who presides. It just doesn't. There's not a lot there. Hypostatic union has its own meaning too. But the thing is, the subject, I can't talk about the hypostatic union outside the context of the Trinity anyways. You know what I mean? It's like a word that like am I going to elucidate further on it where I can just insert the word hypostatic union into a sentence? Well, I was thinking about the hypostatic union the other day, and I was going to say the hypostatic union is, I mean, like what I'm saying is like the way you would talk about the president. Like the president went to but there's reasons to have one word for it. But the problem is with a word like hypostatic union, the subject is so itself in need of explanation constantly that it doesn't make sense to have a summary word that nobody understands. You know what I mean? A summary word that nobody understands. Like nobody understands what the hypostatic union means. So let's so we have to explain it every time. And why not? And it makes sense, and it's easier to just explain it real quick than it is to just use the word and have people going like, what is he talking about? Anyways, the reason I brought that was because his daughter was corrupted from the faith. The wonder girl who knew all the theological terms was corrupted from the faith by a very simple question like, what was it? I forget what it had to do with like, something about like why was God angry about something or other or something. I forget exactly. It was an Old Testament question, like just something about the character, some of God's reaction or something like that. Some simple, if this, then why that? I remember thinking about it. I'm like, well, I don't have a problem with that question. But for her, that was just the simplest thing, to just drop it all. Didn't just drop it. It caused everything to start to unravel. Because faith isn't built out of all these complicated reasons. You know what I mean? It's built out of seeing. And seeing the miracles that God does. Being able to see them or experience them yourself. And because you don't have a hostile attitude. You know, it's like being willing to hear the truth even if you don't believe it. Or even if you don't follow it, you know, being able to listen to like, okay, maybe divorce is adultery, and I'm willing to listen. It's not. Maybe that's something someone like doesn't feel comfortable with, but maybe it's true. I suspect it is true. You know what I mean? They're willing to listen, and that's not going to cause a stumbling. And then all of a sudden they say like, well, it must be true because that man just healed somebody in a remarkable way that was unmistakable. I mean, not just like they put an old lady in a wheelchair and then she got out of the wheelchair, like the withered hand. It's a good example. His hand was withered, like you ever see the and they're not pictures a lot of his hands, but like the Kaiser Wilhelm, the Emperor of Germany, from the Kaiser had a withered arm, and that kind of thing, a deformity, something where it's like that was something, that was really something, or someone raised from the dead. Again, raised from the death is always kind of a weird thing because there have been people who people thought were dead who were not dead, right? People have been mistaken for being dead. So you could make that, not a certain amount of death, though, is kind of unmistakable. But oddly enough, that's not as amazing as something where you can see it physically happen, like a withered hand come to restore as full as the other. But the thing is, if your eye is evil, you can't see that. All you can see is he can't be of God. So there must be, there's always some other explanation for everything, isn't there? I'm taking up half the study on this, but I want to use the last 20 minutes to move on. Okay, but we'll do the second. Take heed therefore the light was in thee, and be not darkness. meaning that the things you think are blinding you. You're blinding yourself with the way you see the world. Your eyes, the way in which you look at things mentally in the world is the source of your blindness. Because you don't want to believe, it becomes impossible to believe. Because you don't want to see, it becomes impossible to see. Because I've talked with a lot of people who are unbelievers, and I realize it's like they don't want to see any evidence. They'll say you have no evidence, and then when you show them evidence, they say that's not evidence, and they're wrong. And it's funny. It's funny because they'll tell me that's not evidence, and I'm like, well, that is evidence. You got a weird idea what evidence is. You're using a word. You mean proof. Ah, proof. No, it isn't proof. Proofs are only found in geometry. You know, you find proofs in geometry, but you won't find it anywhere else, really. What we call proof, we say proven beyond a reasonable doubt. Reasonable doubt. That's not, you want proof beyond any doubt. That only exists in geometry. In most realms of human experience, there's no such thing as proven with no doubt. With no any kind of beyond any doubt. There's no proof like that. Oh, there is. No, there isn't. We don't understand half the things. People also gravity. It's like, well, nobody's proven gravity at all. There's nothing to prove. We don't even understand gravity. We just we just make a set of observations about gravity. Have you been everywhere in the universe to see everything that gravity does? You know? We think we understand it because of functions. But for us, you know, it's like we make a set of observations. That's not proven beyond, you know, to what they think proof is. It's not this absolute thing. It's not absolute. And some people don't understand it. Even now, they would be like, yeah, this is right. It's like, no, you're wrong. You're actually wrong. You're actually wrong, but you don't understand it. Because one of those things where sometimes people, you know what they said is sometimes, it's an interesting thing that, and I hate, do I even say stuff like, but sometimes people with less intelligence consider them so smarter than they really are. Whereas people who are of higher intelligence don't value their intelligence so much. Or they think they're not as smart as they tend to think of themselves as less smart than they are. Because the more you see and know, the more you realize that I don't really know. You know, you start seeing your true place in the universe and your true place in the realm of knowledge and all the possible evidence and proof. And you start seeing like, you are, you know, and then the people who think they know everything, you realize it's like, they're not as smart as they think. You know what I mean? It's not that they're necessarily stupid, but they're not as smart as some people. And, because they don't see their own limitations. And that's a terrible blind spot. And some people don't see the limits of knowledge, and that's an even worse blind spot. Well, I should say it's you can be a lot smarter. You can see your own limitations and not understand the limitations of knowledge itself. Even worse, what I mean is it's an even deeper form of like, because you forget that all the knowledge you have is limited by your own experience. Not your own, but by the experience of creatures exactly like you. Except that which be given divinely, I suppose, right? So the way we see is so very important. So again, he said, as the bright shining of a candle doth give thee light. And he says, you know, no man when he had lighted a candle putteth in a secret place or under a bushel, but on a candlestick. And there's two ways you can look at that. You can look at that as just a public sense, as like, hey, proclaim the gospel. But is that really what he's saying? Well, they are preaching. Jesus is preaching. They repented at the preaching of Jonah. The wisdom of Solomon was known abroad, and the Queen of Sheba came to see it. Certainly. I always say there's an interesting interplay between the idea of let your light so shine before men, which is the concept there of the candle. But he doesn't say it here. He says, let it, does he say, let your light so shine? That they which come in may see the light. Yeah. Interesting. In a sense, because another place he talks about let your light shine before men so they can see your good works, etc., in Matthew. But here he's taking a little different thing. Is let it shine and light up your house is the subtext here. That they which come in may see the light. Because you light candles in houses, right? You light candles in you. That's where the light needs to be kindled. A lot of times people want to make a show, and the interplay is between let your light shine before men and take heed that you do not your alms before men to be seen of them. Otherwise, you have no, there's a sense in which, okay, let them see your good works, but do not make a show out of of doing good works. Don't make doing good works a show that you're trying to, put on for people to gain yourself notoriety or fame or make yourself seem grander than you are, or just gratify yourself. There's 1,000 reasons why people, I suppose, might do that. And people do it all the time. And it's not unusual. But the thrust here is not so much about the public display, but the display within the house, meaning light up the house. Meaning if you are full of light, your immediate surroundings will be full of light. And when people come in, what is that? And now, if they come into your house, what does that mean? If you have a lit candle and lighting your whole body, what's that? The idea of people coming in, to me, it's like people coming into contact with you when you engage in social discourse with people. You know what I mean? When people, because there's a whole thing, like we talk to each other, right? Like I go to the store, I buy groceries. I don't start conducting Bible studies in the grocery store line. You know what I mean? I don't. But if someone were to, and I'm friendly. You know what I mean? But it's like the equivalent of the welcome mat outside the door. If you want to come in and see the light, you got to knock. You know what I mean? It's like it's a well-kept home and the light is shining out from the windows. I should hope so. But to really come in, and if you want to be enlightened, you got to knock and open the door and come in to a more intimate space. You know what I mean? At least there's a certain line that's crossed where someone suddenly comes in there, in your space, in your home. Meaning we're having a talk, we're talking about God. Maybe we begin to talk about the things of God. I always feel when I cross over, and that's why Paul would talk about a door of utterance being opened. There's this idea of this opening door. Jesus even uses it of himself. I'm at the door knocking. If anyone opens, I will come and sup with him. I will come into your home. And so, but there's the literal home and there's the metaphorical home. The metaphorical home is who I am. Like getting to know someone on a more personal level is sort of like entering into their house. You know what I mean? You get to see how they live. You go into someone's home, you see their stuff. You know what I mean? You learn a lot about someone just looking around their house. I remember a pastor told me that. I used to go in. It makes you want to never invite a pastor over, because they're looking around and they're judging your house. And people do that all the time. They're looking around and what are they into? What are they into? I'm sure when you see my house, you're wondering, what's that stuff over there? What are those books up there? What is he reading? What has he read? Right? It's a natural curiosity, right? But when you enter into someone's house, you're getting to know a bit more about them. And when you're not in someone's house, but you are getting to know more about them, like if you're having a real conversation with someone, you are metaphorically entering into their house. You know what I mean? You're entering into their space. Like if you're having a conversation with someone that's real and you're starting to get to know them as a real person, it's like going into their home because you're starting to see what they're really like. And Jesus is saying, let what you're really like be filled with light. So that when people come into the house, they're filled with light. They're enlightened. That the light of God is shining out. So when they come into that space, because it's not about going out in the streets and ringing a bell and saying, hey, listen to me, because that's not really you. That's just a show. And Jesus was very careful to say, don't make a show, but be inwardly really filled with light. And it's all right to have it shine out the windows. Let the whole world see you got light in you. Nothing wrong with being an obvious light. You know what I mean? But you is inside the house. And there's no way, unless people enter into what's real, that they're going to hear that. So, I hope my Bible studies give you a sense of, like, realness. You know what I mean? As opposed to what I like that I do enjoy the more condensed studies I did, and I say this so often. I want to go back and do audio studies on top of this, but they actually take more time. Well, they probably take about the same amount of time. You record, and then it probably takes several hours throughout the week. You know what I mean? But like finding regular time to edit it, when I'm editing, people interrupt me. It's not their fault. I often choose bad times to do it. Whereas this, I get it first thing in the morning. I guess I could get up first thing in the morning and edit, but I could get distracted. There could be any number of things. But here I am, available. So it's good. But the idea of coming into a real space with someone, I do think it is more real, though, even in those studies, because I would edit out things like sniffling, which is, granted, something that's nice to have edited out. And thankfully, my throat feels much better. I don't have all the phlegm anymore. But it's good to get real with people. If you're full of light, if your body is full of light, your person, it doesn't mean your physical body. It means the whole of you. Having no part darkness, the whole shall be full of light. It's interesting. He says, the whole body full of light, the whole shall be. Why did he repeat it like that? You know what I mean? If your whole body is full of light with no darkness, the whole shall be full of light. I thought he just said that. Did he repeat himself? Or what does he mean? Well, what he's saying is, if the part of you that is taking in, you know what I mean, is, first of all, where he says, if thy eye is evil, your body will be full of darkness. Right? If the eye is single, whole, healthy, right? And that's the analogy. Not unharmed. Single means whole, not whole. Like wholesome, healthy, all those words. I didn't even touch that word before, which is funny, because it's important as evil. It's the opposite. If whole versus evil, I didn't even need to go to that definition. I don't know why I didn't just use context. Whole versus unwhole. Evil in effect. Broken up. But that is also, like I said, a metaphor for something deeper. The light of your body, the thing that's going to give you light is your eye. If your eye is darkness, if it sheds darkness, it blocks the light. Right? Then your body is full of darkness. Right? He said that first. In the metaphorical sense. And I think what he's doing here when he talks about your body, if your body is full of light, meaning if the eye is giving light to the body, meaning the way, allowing the light to get in, then the whole person, meaning beyond just the physical, I think he's crossing out of the analogy to let you know that it's not just about the body. Though he's using the analogy of the body, it is about the whole man. That if the thing which takes in light fills the body with light, then the whole shall be light, full of light. As the bright shining of a candle doth give thee light. Like a brightly lit candle lighting up a room and letting also people know outside that there is light inside. If your whole body having no part darkness. Okay, yeah. I don't know why it keeps jumping around me. Oh, let's do this one. Oh, wait. I got 5 minutes. Oh, jeez. I need a 2-hour study, don't I? I shouldn't have taken so long. It's an important verse. The light, the body full of light. Do I finish or do I go on? No, well. Yeah, it's so connected to it. And now I feel like I can't wait for tomorrow because I just really didn't want to stop here. Oh. Won't he? But then he goes, because it's talking about making the clean the outside of the cup and the platter. The inward part is full of ravening wickedness. Well, let's just get that. Let's actually just cover the opening verses. And he spake, a certain Pharisee besought him to dine with him. And he went in and sat down to meat. So he's saying these things. And the Pharisee invites him. You know, Jesus dined with Pharisees too. He dined with the religious hypocrites. He did not, you know, it's like he showed them also miracles. He didn't necessarily show them the miracles that would have made them fear, which is kind of what they needed to believe. Like if you look at Paul, what caused Paul to believe? And I remember saying sometimes it's painful, hurtful things that need to happen to your life to change it. For Paul, I remember I was talking about, because my wife pointed this out to me, when I was talking about like people say, oh, I want a sign. I'm like, what? You want me to hit you with fire? You ungodly, wicked man. I see your thoughts. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like, I know what you're thinking, and it's evil. You would like a sign, such as, I call down fire from heaven and destroy sinners? What kind of sign would you like, sinner? Is that what you want to see? Sinners burned? Shall I start with your friend next to you? What is it you want? You want to fear me? You want to see a fearful sign? Fearful signs in the heavens, men's hearts failing them for fear and for looking after those things, those are coming. This is a time of restoration. I came to save men's lives, not destroy them. There'll be time enough for destruction later. That's what people don't understand about Jesus. He's just all, God loves everybody, and it's fine the same. God loves his wonderful plan for your life, or he's going to torture you forever. I don't know, it's strange ideas. Mixing together doesn't make a lot of sense, does it? Please dine with me. And he goes and he sits down. He marveled that he had first not... we can't pick it up here. Let's pick it up with verse 37. I wanted to go on, but no point. I'm just going to talk about one more thing with Paul. Boy, because I was talking about that, and I was just throw this in at the end here. But just that the bad things, like I said, sometimes we need harsh signs. But it's not always good. It is it is good. You know what I mean? What I'm saying is, we may not enjoy it. You think Paul liked being struck blind and knocked off his animal? I don't remember if it knocked him off violently or what. But he was struck, we usually say struck down on the road to Damascus. You know what I mean? God has many ways of getting your attention. You know what I mean? That's, even you ever see the guy or heard the old trope of the guy getting up on the soapbox and saying, if God is real, let him knock me off this box. And then someone goes up and punches him in the face and says, never ask God to do something you can do yourself, which is kind of cheap. I'd let him stand there. You know? Because of whatever. It's like, it's not as clever a point as that is. It's never advisable. But it's not going to make the guy believe. He wanted God to do it. You know? And God can do it. He can do things you could do yourself. Surely. It's just a question of who does he want? You know what I mean? And it's not... We can't tell. You know, like I said... Sometimes I'll think to myself, like, I can see why God would choose me. You know, it's like, and you can see why God would choose Paul. And I can see why God would choose anybody, because everybody's got something. There's some gift. We've all been gifted with things in life and minds. You know what I mean? Even the simplest among us has power to do good. So there's powers for good in everyone. And there's humble, you know, people who don't believe, you know, there's all kinds of reasons you could find. And there's equally all kinds of reasons you could find why God would never choose any of us. Anyways. I'm just going to end it a minute early. It's going to take a minute for the thing to pass by. Thanks for joining me in this study. We will pick it up there at verse 37 next time and see how we do. Thanks for joining me. There we go. Sorry.
The light of the body is the eye, if therefore thine eye be single, thy whole body